I could see like people preoccupating much more with the foods, their alimentations. Here in Brazil, unfortunately, the fires came back once again, and the Amazon reached the tipping point with 20% of deforestation. In the Pantanal, just with this year's fires, we lost 26% of the biome just with this year's fire. And when I saw people thinking about what they were consuming, I saw that not everyone was thinking how this whole system is connected with each other. For example, the meat, the cattle that is sold here from Brazil to other parts of the world, this is what helps with the deforestation, with the fires. So when we think about all the small changes that we are doing, we can once think that we are going somewhere, but we have to stop thinking about this and remember that in all this globalization and interconnected world, every little act we do, it has an impact. We cannot like only stop consuming clothes and think this is enough. Only stop like flying and think this is enough. This is not enough. We have to engage like in individual level, but also in collective level, also in political level. We all got overwhelmed with the elections in the US because we all knew that these elections had an impact for all of the world. And this is how I want to see the world facing the climate crisis, thinking it together, thinking it collectively. We know about all the data, about all the destructions. We are seeing that we cannot survive as humanity, but we can still do something if we do it now. And if we do everything that is in our power. Honestly, I don't see why all the whole world, all nations didn't declare yet that we are living through a climate emergency. This pandemic that showed that our systems were not functional, and especially on places from where I come from, that we also have the impact since colonization in the way that is structured, the access to health, the access to food. Those impacts got so much bigger on people that were in the front lines, that if we do not do something as a world community and fast, we won't have a future for us to pass the burden to future generations. So I feel sad when I hear that it's okay because the young people will do something about it. We are going to do something about it right now, and I count with everyone to do it with us. Thank you so much.
Hi, and welcome to our last panel for the Sustainable Americas Summit. Leaders from across the Americas will join us to discuss the most urgent global environmental challenges in the framework of the COVID-19 pandemic and how they're adapting to build more resilient strategies to address climate change.
I have the pleasure of introducing our panelists and our moderator. Joining us from Mexico, we have Elias Gatan, who is the director of Taller 13, Daniela Chacon Arraiz, executive director at Fundación Tandem from Ecuador, Lauren Latour, the Climate and Ambition Coordinator from the Climate Action Network based in Canada, and our local moderator, Sonrisa Lucero, who is the Sustainability Strategist for the Denver Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. We really hope you'll enjoy this conversation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Where Do We Go From Here panel, Where Do We Go From Here Sustainable Leadership panel, as part of the Sustainable America Summit for 2020. I apologize for dogs in the background as we continue to go in our COVID world. He was perfectly silent until just this moment. So that's right on time. So well, gracias Rio for letting us know you're here. So my name is Sonrisa Lucero. As was mentioned, I'm with the Denver Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. My job has often been to be the middle of intersecting interests and organizations. And so in our office, we are often the convener and always trying to bring together many different voices in all the different sectors that impact our environment in our social sustainability as well as our economic sustainability. And so it's really an honor to be here today on this international conversation across our Americas to try and figure out how all of these themes that our keynote speaker so adequately or so beautifully described impact all of us. It's something that we share, whether we're in Mexico, in Canada, or in South America. This is all something that we are all sharing together, and also a love for the planet. And so while we all weather COVID together, as well as the social injustice that has persisted since colonialization, and they've all risen, or they've both risen to the forefront, impacting how it is that we're going to look at sustainability going forward and how it is that we do our work. And so I'm very excited for this conversation and for our wonderful panelists. And with that, I am going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves briefly before we start our conversation. Elias, would you like to lead us off, please?
It's such an honor and pleasure to be here and share in a conversation that I know can do what we always meant to do, which is bridge all the Americas together. I love the biennial. Thank you for inviting me. I'm from Mexico City. My work is in architecture, urban planning, and I've been trying to fight for Los Rios to be living rivers in Mexico City for the last 15 years. And thank you.
Daniela, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Sonrisa. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here. I actually worked at the Biennial of the Americas in 2011 and 2012. So I'm coming back home, which is really good for me. So thank you so much for the invitation. I am former Vice Mayor of Quito, Ecuador, and former City Councilor. And I have been working on sustainable mobility and promoting women leadership in the sustainability agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, and Lauren.
Thank you so much, Sonrisa. Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Latour. I live in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, on the traditional territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. I work for Climate Action Network Canada, which is a national node of a larger international organization which focuses on climate policy. My position is Climate Ambition Coordinator, which is kind of a fun title. I mostly work on domestic policy and movement mobilization. Because we're a network organization, we have, I think, upwards of about 120 different organizations across Canada or across Turtle Island that we help pull together, and we help do a lot of sort of coalition building work and network building amongst our membership organizations. So I'm lucky enough to get to work with a whole bunch of really fantastic people and communities and groups every single day that are all sort of working to bring about climate action in their own individual corner of the world. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm so excited to talk with you all. I have my background in youth climate justice organizing. So whenever I get the opportunity to talk about young people and their action, I always get really jazzed up. So thanks so much for having me today, folks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lauren, and panelists. So I would like to just go ahead and jump on in, and just to let our audience know, we are going to try and have as much of a conversation as possible. We have such wonderful voices here today, and I think we'll benefit so much from everyone getting to just speak with each other and as naturally as possible. But with that, I'd like to start us off with what we are thinking about are our most urgent environmental concerns as it relates to the context of your work. And this has probably evolved maybe a little bit over the last year. 2020 has thrown us all a curveball. But if you can speak to maybe how you were originally approaching that, and if there have been any changes over the course of the year, and whomever would like to jump in first, please go ahead and go for it. Everyone's so polite, but maybe Daniela.
I can go first. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, so as I said before, I've been working in promoting sustainable mobility and women leadership between the sustainability agenda focus on mobility. And I would say that one of the most urgent environmental concerns for all cities around the world is their mobility and transportation systems. We are seeing that the main source of contamination within cities is the transport sector. And it's not only a matter of moving towards electric vehicles or electric sources of transportation, because that's not going to solve the problem. The problem is not only contamination, the problem is also congestion. And the problem is that cities are not being planned and designed for their users, for the citizens. They are being thought and planned for the vehicles and for the transportation of vehicles, but are not really planned for the transportation of people. And then, and that's where we go to the women's issue as well. Women are the main users of the public transportation systems in the cities, but those systems are not planned for women's needs, because the mobility that we have as women is completely different to the mobility of men, because men go from the house to the office and then back to the house, pre-COVID, of course. And women, we have our caring responsibilities. We are the main people that are responsible for caring for children or for the elderly or for the household. So our mobility is from the house to the school, to the hospital, to do grocery shopping. And so we are constantly being discriminated in the way the cities are planned, because they're not planned thinking of the mobility and the role and the caring role of women. And the pandemic and COVID, I think one of the maybe positive things that we can see from this pandemic is that it has brought some light on the caring roles of women and how important is the caring roles for the sustainability of a city, for the sustainability and the health of a society. So I would say that one of the most urgent concerns is to start thinking that cities are, the citizens, we are both we're women, we have different necessities, and if we need and if we are going to promote sustainable mobility, and if we really want people to start walking and to start using their bicycles, because that's where we need to go. It's not only about, I cannot stress this enough, it's not only about electric vehicles. Is about walking more, is about using your bicycle more, is about using sustainable ways of transportation. And the only way that is going to work is when the city is planned in a way that I can actually walk to places, that I can actually take a bike to places, and it's not going to take me forever to go to one city and to another. And that requires leadership, that requires political will, that requires that people that are making the decisions are the ones that are living the problems. And that also goes back to my other topic of interest, which is we need more women in leadership positions so that we can start planning cities and implementing policies that will include us all. And that can have a huge impact in climate change, I believe, in terms of mobility and cities.
And if I may lead it off, because it ties in very well with the situation that I'm witnessing here in Mexico City. And be it that we have advanced in building a more equitable city in terms of mobility. I mean, 50% of travel in Mexico City is car travel is beneath 7 kilometers. And still over 80% of public budget goes to private car infrastructure. We are in the middle of a fight right now, be it a fan that I was of Claudia, our current mayor. We're projected to double our second-story freeways in Mexico City. And they're building a second-story freeway across Xochimilco wetland, which is a UNESCO protected and Ramsar site. So let me tie in all of this because the importance is that the money goes to that infrastructure. And we're debating whether to leave the current bike lane that emerged in Insurgentes, which is one of the longest streets in the world that crosses right behind your house, my house, as we say here. And we're fighting over migajas, crumbs of budget to leave that as a permanent bike infrastructure. And if I can tie this into also enjoying your bike ride, you see mobility and water in Mexico City has always been tied hand in hand. We used to move through canals, right? There used to be a canal from Xochimilco to the center of Mexico City 100 years ago. We are a highly abundant water system. And what we've done is tube that water via ductos and have done basically the contrary to what we need to do to add on to that mobility is through a living river, next to a living river. The water situation is dire. As an environmental secretary we worked with in Puebla used to say, del baño a la ensalada, from the bathroom to your salad plate. This is the situation. Mexico City feeds crops that come back and feed Mexico City. They call that river Rio de la Revancha. So how can we tie in this mobility into the whole systemic and what we've been fighting for, what I've been fighting for in our NGO, in Cuatro Alcuba, and in my own office, is to bring a watershed, a bioregional planning into effect, where obviously a lot of things come into it. And speaking to the highly problematic relationship we have to women here, women are the people who go to fetch the water, right? In all these badly managed water systems and in a very badly designed public transportation system or inefficiently designed transportation system, it's also a very vulnerable point where when they go for the water is when they are vulnerable. And we need to be able to tie in so we were so eloquently taught before the panel started that we need to think of it as a system. And how can we think of it as a whole, right? This is, I think, our main challenge, and being able to assign a budget to what enhances life within your city. You know?
Yeah, definitely. Lauren, any thoughts that you'd like to add there about?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to take things in a very slightly different direction, not because in Canada and in the northern part of the continent, we don't deal with those issues. Our cities are very poorly planned here and very much car centric. So we suffer from a lot of those same problems. But in Canada specifically, I'm not saying anything new here, but we obviously, one of our biggest environmental issues is continued fossil fuel extraction. Not only from the tar sands or the oil sands, but when it comes to offshore drilling, fracking, hydraulic fracturing for natural gas and methane across the country. But yeah, the continued sort of propping up of the fossil fuel industry on the part of the federal government and provincial governments. And a lot of this, of course, ties back to fear of job loss and wanting to make sure that we're not leaving our communities and our workers hamstrung in the transition. But the Canadian government for years now, since Trudeau came into power back in 2014, I think, has been saying that the Canadian government isn't going to support the fossil fuel industry via financial subsidization anymore, and this continues to sort of be the case here. Every year at the G20, we say we're going to phase out fossil fuel subsidies. We're supposed to be doing analyses and studies with it in tandem with Argentina. And yeah, we continue to subsidize the fossil fuel industry far more than we ever have the sort of renewable energy sector. And this is something that we're kind of only seeing exasperated with COVID relief efforts. Obviously, we want to see a lot of money going into communities. We want to see a lot of money going into subsidization of various sectors in order to make sure that we're not seeing mass job loss as a result of COVID-19. But what we are seeing is that for every dollar that goes towards the renewable energy sector or a low carbon sector, as a result of COVID-19, we're seeing that dollar probably doubled going into the fossil fuel sector, because in Canada, like I said, as a result of fear of job loss and also this weird sense of identity as a petro state, the federal government and some provincial governments sort of refuse to loosen that vice grip on the oil sands and on the fossil fuel industry in Canada, despite the fact that it really doesn't actually provide that much work for various communities. But anyway, that is sort of, in addition to a large number of environmental issues, continued sort of support of the fossil fuel industry plagues Canada, and as a result, plagues the rest of the world as well.
It's really interesting. There's something that, I'm already taking from each of you, some of these structural problems that we've been identifying, whether it's, you're not considering all users in the design of a system, or you're not making it accessible to them, or we're consolidating and moving away from natural systems into something that's kind of forced. Or it's that we are, and that can almost even be said of the job market as well, right? Where it's like we're having this natural movement maybe away from fossil fuels in some sense, but we are actually actively pushing back against to kind of buffet that industry. My question for you all is, how are some of these, structural problems and opportunity gaps being revealed as a result of the pandemic? Are there any new kind of elements of opportunity or challenges that the pandemic has revealed in your respective areas?
I think we need to realize that the opportunities are rising, and push for them and stick to them. Like the emerging bike lanes across the world, I think are very much amazing. And the fact that green infrastructure in Mexico City has been pushed by allies, academics, architects, urbanists, and we are now seeing green infrastructure, green-blue infrastructure of wetlands, rain garden systems, and all of this pop up within the city. Just proves that if we have a well-articulated message, be it, again, paint a bike lane with your neighbors, if we push for it enough, we can get them to consolidate and being it a part of real city planning. There's a big opportunity for activists to not just say what is wrong, but actually just go out on the streets and paint it. And I think that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that the pandemic brings a lot of opportunities. I think first of all, it has shown that inequality and structural inequalities are really harmful to societies to be able to respond to shocks, internal or external, or to build resilience. And we definitely need to build resilience, because we are going to be facing this type of crisis for many years long. I mean, this is the first global pandemic in this magnitude that we have experienced, but it's not going to be the last. And as the climate change threat continues to grow, we're going to be experiencing more and more of these global issues that are going to affect the whole world in different ways. So I do think that the pandemic has shown us that if we don't address inequality, and if we don't care for the most vulnerable population in each of our cities, then we as a city and we as a society are not going to be able to respond. I always say that a city is as vulnerable as its most vulnerable citizen. And so we definitely do need to start focusing policies and responses, both from the public and the private and the civic society sector, towards those vulnerabilities, to start really, really focusing on closing those gaps and those structural inequalities that we face, that affect especially women and the most vulnerable populations. And then I also think that the pandemic has also presented an opportunity to start thinking of different ways on how our society is going to work. I think things are going to change completely, even though we have, when we have a vaccine and it's safe for everybody to go out again. I do think that how some of the private sector, some sectors have been working, they're going to change. We're going to go much more towards the technology use we've seen that it's so easy to work from our home, and that we are sometimes even much more productive with all of the problems that comes with. But I would say that in terms of mobility, for example, and in terms of planning of cities and making cities more equitable and making cities more walkable and more breathable, I do think that the pandemic is showing us that we can work in a different way, we can work more intelligently, and we can also move more intelligently. And I think that could have a great impact on climate change.
Yeah, it's something that's been really interesting that I've been observing recently. One is that here in sustainability in the United States, equity and the social aspect of sustainability has been rising. And so often we keep seeing the maps of people that have lowest levels of education, lowest incomes, biggest, highest health risks, biggest impact by COVID, biggest vulnerability to climate change within our city. It's all the same people that it always ends up hitting. And those maps are really just kind of overlapping all at the same time. And it really, for me at least, I think gives us what you feel already in your gut, that all of these things are intertwined and that they're related, that our systemic racism, that our histories of colonization, our history of sexism has led to a place where we struggle with climate change. It's almost like it's a symptom of a greater disease, right? And COVID, I think, has done a really great job, if I want to give it any kind of praise, of highlighting all of the places our systems are broken, right? So it's turned up the heat on us, and anything that was fragile broke. Lauren, I'm curious, especially with your ties into youth justice movements and the folks that are keeping us accountable in so many ways. And last year really was, 2019 was a year of youth leadership around climate change. And it's really like from some of them that I'm taking my cues. Here in the US, we have a 0 Hour that's really called out this point of connecting the history of colonization and to climate change. What have you observed as how the discussion around inequity and social change are connected back to climate change?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the, I shouldn't say cool, but like one of the amazing things to sort of come out of all of the disparity of COVID is that we're seeing increasingly that people want really big, bold, systemic, transformational change, and that's what people want to see from politicians and at the policy level as well. And obviously, I think part of that was sparked, part of that was started, and sort of that flame was lit back in 2019 with all of the student activism across the world. But we're seeing that carry into the calls for COVID relief this past year. We're seeing that call for a Green New Deal sort of transition into a call for a just recovery here in Canada, at least. And I know this was mirrored and reflected in the States and in other countries as well. But we saw really, really large coalitions of organizations and communities coming together, calling for a just recovery effort with sort of as a result of COVID. So that's been really, really fantastic to see, because the groups coming together are so cross-sectoral and so intersectional that the groups calling for a green recovery or a just recovery aren't just your typical CanRacs or Greenpeace or environmental organizations as we typically know them. It's people from all walks of life, from all sectors we're seeing. People who wouldn't normally consider themselves environmental or climate activists taking part in calling for stronger climate policy. And we're seeing environmental activists who have in the past been really, really bad about supporting other movements, calling out vocally for Indigenous sovereignty, Indigenous rights, respecting the fact that Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. So I think that's one of the coolest things to see, is that perhaps as a result of the large amount of student organizing that happened last year, we're seeing a really bold, really powerful cross-sectoral movement calling not only for environmental justice or climate justice, but like really social justice in general. And we're finally starting to see that people really grasp the concept that these things are inextricably linked and deeply connected, and that when it comes to climate, it's not just about reducing carbon emissions and ticking those boxes and getting the numbers down, but it really is about uplifting sort of, making sure that the tide lifts up all boats, and that we're supporting people along the way, and that we're not leaving anybody behind in a transition, whether that's a transition out of COVID or a transition to a fossil-free future. Because we're doing this for people, right? The reason we care about the climate is because we're worried about friends and neighbors and loved ones. So if we're not sort of passing these policies in a way that makes sure that we're caring for everybody, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Can I add to people also bees and biodiversity and bringing nature back into the city? We were part of the first public wetland, and mapping that, we realized we went from 4 species to 99, and we're sequestering at least 80 tons of carbon within a hectare. And this is becoming more and more public way of operating. A big construction company we're involved now that used to do malls is right now looking into doing a water park and a living park and a water museum. So there's definitely a big tide changing. And I just want to put my little grain of what keeps me at peace is art. And I'm being fortunate enough to participate in the Design Science Studio organized by the Buckminster Fuller Institute. If you want to be inspired, check that out. I think it's a beautiful institute, and we're 140 individuals talking almost every day. And this came out, which I want to share with you. It's the closest distance between two people is art. And it's just this idea of just creating and exhibiting, illuminating a thing, creating something about it, and trying to generate a conversation. Art is, I believe, our one of our most leveraged, or trim tabs, as Buckminster used to say, are highly leveraged ways of transforming systems.
Yeah, there's a really good, I can't remember who says it, but somebody said that the role of the artist is to make the resistance irresistible. And I've always really loved that and really sort of drawn inspiration from it. Because yeah, art is one of the ways that we storytell. It's the way that we communicate. I was thinking just this morning about, again, because I'm always sort of thinking about the Green New Deal, but one of the reasons that the New Deal was so successful and so loved and so widely accepted by so many was that the sort of the rollout of public art that went along with it. So people made sure that when you got that job, you were getting that job because of the New Deal, and you were getting that job to clean up a wetland or install new electrical power or something like that. So it's art plays a huge role when it comes to storytelling and communication, and making sure that everybody's sort of on the same page and fighting for the same thing, and understands why the spending is happening. Because especially on a political level, I think there's often a knee-jerk reaction that people get scared when they hear a government is going to be spending billions of dollars on a project. And art and storytelling is a great way of reassuring people that, like, no, this money is being spent to better your life, to better your community. So it's really cool to hear that you're working on a project like that.
Yes, art. I deeply believe in a way to exhibit art, also in a way that it informs. I think that's also something that is where, I don't know, my true love of art, right? It's trying to bring that landscape and that land art of Andy Goldsworthy and Storm King within cities, right? I think there's huge potential of how we integrate and redesign our cities in the future. And you know, Mexico City has 5 square meters of green area per inhabitant in the urban landmass. We need to have 16, and so there's huge potential for new parks that are wetlands, that are rain gardens, that are food forests, and that's where I believe we can tie in the most of the net. And I love how we were saying, I don't know if it was this or pre, but the network, right? The networking, right? The knitting of that
working.
The networking, working, and the petate we say here, it's like the knitting of this beautiful thread that ties in all our subjects, and really that's how life kind of works, right? A beautiful biodiverse system has netted things, connecting them, being interdependent, codependent, and lifting everything up. All of life, right? All of life.
So I'd like to take a moment to invite our audience to please add your questions into the chat, and we will work them into our conversation here. So we have about 15 minutes left, so please enter your questions as we go here. And with that, I wanted to ask you, Daniela, what are you seeing kind of working on the ground for this kind of transformation in Quito? I mean, the one thing I did want to say is, like, with this conversation that, Lauren and Elias have been touching on here, is that, and this is something I've said too, is that, stopping climate change starts with the heart, and art is a wonderful way to connect to that art, into the heart rather. And that the more that we're able to bring nature into contact with humans, right, with people, the more you inspire that love and that movement to protection for it, and even into building a relationship with it. And if you're in relationship with nature, then you're more likely to be a good partner to it. Yeah, I really want to turn to you and see, what are you seeing on the ground working in Quito?
Well, actually, 2019 was also a very crazy year for Ecuador. I don't know if you guys all remember, but in 2019, we saw a lot of social unrest starting in Latin America, and actually Ecuador was the first one. And it was because, we have a very important indigenous population in my country. And there's completely, there's such a divide in how indigenous communities see our interaction with nature. And it's just so beautiful how they want to care for the environment, and how they actually see, have you said it, Elias, we're all connected. And I think the pandemic has shown how connected we are, and how important it is that if only one person is not doing well, then that's definitely going to show within the system. And so it was really, really interesting to see how an indigenous movement just became a social movement to push for social justice, to push for another view on climate change. There has definitely been a lot of intersections with art, which has been really, really interesting, but it has been mostly this kind of like social justice movement that is questioning our system, that is questioning our political system, that is questioning our political leaders. And now we're actually in the midst of an election. We have a presidential election in February. And one of the main issues from the presidential election is that for the first time in the history of Ecuador, the indigenous candidate has actually a lot of chances to become president and to become the first indigenous president of Ecuador, which is really, really interesting, because this has opened a much more broader conversation in terms of how we are viewing our relationship to nature. How you've seen how, all of the indigenous Ecuadorian communities within the Amazon have been fighting against the oil industry, and nothing has been done here. So I think this is a really, really interesting time to see how this new, they're not new, they have been here forever. This view, the indigenous view of how we relate to the community, and the I don't know how to say this in English, because it's a cosmovisión andina. I don't really know how to explain that in English, but it's the way, our indigenous communities see how we are related to one another and to our nature. And I do think that could be really interesting for a new political conversation, for a new electoral conversation, to see, how our society is actually going to respond to that demand from many youth movements, from social movements, from indigenous movements, from women's movements. And I think here the activism has been the main driver. I think, as in everywhere, activism has been the main driver of change. And I do hope that could relate to political change from our leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Such good news. I got chills. Yeah.
Absolutely. So does anyone else want to follow up on that theme, or because I have another question here too for you all. So
a little pick up on what Daniela was saying. It's that native cosmology, I guess you could say, that places evolution, right? That, as my mentors say, the story of place. how has this place evolved? And we need to take into account, I mean, the Americas are one of the most beautifully managed ecosystems across the continent. I invite everybody to read 1941 and 1943 from Charles C. Mann and America Before. I mean, the deep knowledge of the Amazon and how that was forested, and the food forests of or California, and fire management within the landscape. I mean, the amount of knowledge that Native people have here is, I believe, one of the most important solutions for us to overcome whatever climate change brings about.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting because I also think there's something that I've been trying to develop a little bit more too, but as a Latinx, Latino, Latina communities across the continents, sometimes for whatever reason we forget to, I just don't think it's in the conversation enough about our own indigenous heritage and how so much of that carencia, or like your longing, your love for place, runs deep within your soul, no matter where you are. You still kind of have that really strong love of land and of place. And I think that does come from the parts of our culture that have passed on indigenous heritage and in our own indigenous roots. And it's something that I think could be very powerful if we, as a people, can own and carry forward. But at this point, I want to turn us a little bit to our youth movements, and I maybe want to blend a question that came from the audience with one of our own here, which is, what messages or calls to action do you have to the youth who are part of this movement, or what advice might you give them?
Yeah, I guess I can go first. I think one of my biggest sort of pieces of advice, especially as we increasingly hear and learn about sort of climate grief and climate anxiety and stress related to environmental issues, is for young people, and I know this sounds so futile, but like, please don't feel like the whole world rests on your shoulders and it's about your individual actions and everything that you do in a given day. I feel like it's something I felt as a young person, and I still see a lot. People are so concerned with, did I bring my reusable metal straw when I went and got a drink with my friends? Did I ride my bike to work instead of take the drive from my mom? Or did I make sure to compost my banana peel? And it's not that all of those individual actions aren't important. They certainly are. We certainly need to be taking those steps to make sure that we're sort of behaving ethically and sort of taking community well-being into our everyday actions. But I think one of the things that we really have to remember, and that I would really encourage young people to hold, is the reality that when it comes to climate change, the vast majority of emissions historically and presently are caused by a small number of very large corporations. And that if we're really going to see change happen when it comes to climate change and when it comes to sort of reducing our emissions, what we need to do is we need to see big shifts and big change coming from those corporations. And if we're going to get that, we need to see really strong regulation and legislation from our governments. So to me, what that tells me is one of the best things a young person can do is to get involved politically, whether that means engaging in an election or engaging in politics at your community level, getting involved in community organizations, getting involved in sort of mutual aid efforts. It doesn't necessarily have to look like electoral politics, but it does have to look like sort of like moving and shaking things from a political standpoint, from a community standpoint. And again, that doesn't even have to look like politics or engagement at a federal level or a provincial or sort of territorial or statewide level. We see a whole lot of opportunity for big shifts happening at a municipal level, like Daniela and like Elias have talked about today. Municipalities are leading the way when it comes to emissions reductions, and municipalities have a whole lot of power to reduce and a whole lot of power to really change mitigation and adaptation approaches to climate change. So it's really important that young people get involved politically, not only at that federal level, but at the municipal level as well. Because I know, and pardon the use of the term, I know municipal politics isn't always sexy to get involved in, but it has such wide-reaching impact. So that's
I think it's very
sexy, Lauren. It's very sexy.
We Bomba. It's
Yeah.
very sexy.
And it's going to
And-
get increasingly sexy because, you know, cities
Exactly.
have the answer. You know, the world
Absolutely.
the cities. We are moving towards fast urbanization. By 2050, 80% of the population are going to live in cities. So cities are the answer to climate change. So yeah, you took my words. I was going to say, please get involved with politics, especially now that we are living such a worldwide crisis of the political systems and the trust that the political system need to build for us to be to feel represented and to feel that is actually going to affect change. So I do think that the main issue, and as a former politician myself as well, is not easy. It is very difficult, but it's so rewarding. And you can actually affect change. And I think that's what we all want.
Absolutely. I'm going to add on to all you're saying. But with one, I think we need to be able, or who's listening needs to be able to tie it into what something you care deeply about. It's like that ikigai, I believe it's called, is like, what does the world need? What am I good at? And what can I get paid doing, right? And something like that is a ikigai. The Japanese call it the ikigai. So it's, James Baylog is a photographer, and chasing ice is one of the most moving images you could see to help us realize the glaciers. So tie in something that you love with something that your locality needs. And at the same time, it can be, again, painting something on the street, or putting up a beautiful pollinator garden in your backyard, or growing your own balcony food, and something that can really inspire. But we mustn't lose, like in doing our own individual tasks. And I do believe health is by necessity becoming sexy again. But federally, right, we are building a new oil refinery. We are building a gas energy where there is no gas. We're gonna have to take the gas to Mérida 6. They were asking about the badly named Tren Maya. It's bringing overdevelopment to areas that arguably would need that kind of development. They need a more regenerative kind, I believe, of development. It's crossing a biosphere reserve. It's going to be pumped by diesel. We did some graphics and helping nurture this. They're going to be underwater in the next, hopefully not, but maybe 30 to 50 years, right? So why can't we start investing all our fossil and gray infrastructure into living systems, into regenerative infrastructures, which we know and so many people have piloted across the world, and that will not happen with us just planting food in our backyard. And I'm saying we need to do both. We need to do it, what you can do to become healthy, what you can be to tie in with your neighbors, clean up a local river or a ravine nearby, but do get involved and publicize it in a way that gets people involved and inspired, so that we can accomplish a macro systems change. Because if we can't accomplish a macro system change, what we do individually will just end up being good while we did it, but our big systems will ultimately collapse inward on us if we don't manage to change those macro systems. So I don't know what needs to be accomplished. Honestly, it's just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing until we get a progressive in office, right? I don't know.
You know, this is such an amazing conversation, and I really love the fact that we highlighted the importance of local. As a city employee myself, it's been really wonderful and rewarding for me to be able to work so hard to improve my hometown, and it's the place that I love dearly. And so to be able to work on policies that impact so directly my own community, it's very rewarding. And it's also like where we've been able to have the most direct impact, right? And then the thing that's been really interesting is that we then partner with other cities and we learn from each other and we share from one another. And then, we've created this network across the country and across the continent now that has been kind of sharing this information knowledge. And the majority of the emissions, the majority of the populations are in the cities. And so it really creates a huge opportunity for change at scale by being able to actually, ironically, the most impact is by coming closest home. And with that, sadly, we're at the top of the hour here, and I'm going to have to close us out. But I wanted to maybe ask each of our panelists in maybe just a sentence or so, what is giving you the most hope? And if you could maybe just leave us on that note, I think that would be a wonderful. And anyone who wants to start first.
I can go first. I would say that what gives me more hope is that there's an awakening. You know, even though it might feel sometimes that it's not going that fast, as fast as we want, there is an awakening, and there is a new conversation that we haven't had for many, many years. And so if we focus on that awakening and in that conversation, we can definitely make the big changes that we're pushing for in this panel.
Sorry for
Yeah,
that.
No, go ahead, Elias.
You please.
Thanks. No, really sort of just echoing what Daniela said. What gives me hope is the power of really, really strong, diverse, broad, intersectional movements being driven by people at the grassroots and community level. That's absolutely what gives me hope. Because like you said, Elias, we're fighting until we get progressive politicians elected in office, and even then we have to keep pushing and we have to keep fighting in order to make sure that they sort of stick to their guns and deliver on their promises. So that's where I see hope, is in the number of people sort of rising up and claiming their space and claiming their voices right now.
Yes, I love it. I repeat a phrase saying there's good people everywhere, even in the Mexican government, and we need to tune into those great people within the companies, within those governments, and they want to do great stuff. We need to realize that they do want to do great stuff. There are big accomplishments for civil society within Mexico City and everywhere, but what I'm tied in is to Mexico City. So it's just keep organizing better, keep looking for potential, and it's not about the confrontation. I think it's looking for that synergistic potential in projects and in places. And I'm hopeful for what I'm seeing, and how can we expand? This is, I believe, as Buckminster phrased it, this design science decade. How can we expand? Because we have 10 years to half our emissions. So we need to get to work, and I'm excited about that expansion and how it's going to feel.
Well, I could definitely have this conversation all morning for my time here, and I really appreciate the opportunity from the biennial to moderate this conversation and to get to meet each of you through our presentation, our panel here. And I just want to thank you for your wisdom, for your passion, for your energy, and everything that you are doing to make your communities and our planet a better place. And so I am sad that you will not get to hear a roarous applause, but please know that it is happening, and I will give you as much of one as I can. So thank you very much. And Robin, with that, I believe I hand it back to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for this incredible panel. Lauren and Elias, Daniela and Sonrisa, I really thank you for your time and your wisdom. I certainly was really inspired by what you all shared today, and have a lot of reflecting to do myself. We are at 11 o'clock, which is the end of this panel discussion, but we do have a special bonus for you all if you'd like to stay and participate. Matheus Ferreira from Davida is a wonderful guide in meditation, and he has recorded this sustainable self-meditation. A lot of sort of climate action work is so much of self-giving, but how do we take a moment to give back to ourselves and re-energize and continue this fight for climate justice? So if with that, we are going to turn it over to a 10-minute mindfulness meditation, and we invite you all to stay if you're able. I have practiced it myself, and I can vouch that it's truly a really wonderful experience, and I hope you all enjoy. Thank you so much.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Matheus Ferreira and I am a director at Davida Healthcare. I work in the field of organizational and leadership development. I'm originally from Brazil, but for the past 6 years, I have been living in Denver, Colorado, here in the United States. Like many of you that care for other professionals in other organizations, our healthcare workers, our caregivers, are experiencing a lot of screen fatigue, compassion fatigue, and also because of social distancing, many of them are also experiencing a lack of connection, of human connection. We know that times are tough. And because you all care for many different people and organizations helping manage and combating climate change, I always think it's important for us to have moments of self-care in a way that we can ground ourselves in the here, in the now. So one of the things I want to share with you today is a simple but very effective practice of mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness meditation has been popularized by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, a physician that has been using the mindfulness-based stress reduction approach for over 40 years. And here at Davida, the company that I work for, we have been using a lot of different mindfulness techniques and approaches to help our teammates to cope with the current times. There are many different methods and practices that utilize mindfulness. Today, I'm going to be introducing you and guiding you through a practice called body scanning. We're going to be using our bodies as a source of guidance, but also as a way to ground ourselves in this present moment. So make sure that you are seated comfortably and you have no cell phones or tablets, computers, nothing beeping, nothing flashing light in your face, disturbing you, distracting you. Make sure that you're seated on a chair or on the floor. It's up to you. Make sure that your spine is straight, yet relaxed. Bring your shoulders to your ears and roll them back. This way you're gonna open up your chest. It's gonna be a little easier to breathe and relax. You can put your hands on your thighs and just make sure that your legs are not crossed. Make sure that both of the soles of your feet are planted firmly and again, yet relaxed on the floor. Make sure that you're feeling the four corners of your feet in touch with the floor. Take a deep breath in and exhale. And as you exhale, just allow the weight of your upper body to be held by the chair. Just relax your neck, your shoulders, your trunk. Let your hip bones and the chair hold your weight. You can close your eyes. In the body scanning mindfulness practice, what I'm going to be asking you to do is to bring your attention to specific parts of your body. And that's it. But while we're doing that, if a thought, a sensation, or an emotion distracts you, that's not a problem. Just gently bring your attention back to the physical sensation of the specific area of the body that I'm going to be calling out. So again, let's take another deep breath. Inhale and exhale, relax. With your eyes closed, bring your attention to the crown of your head, to the top of your head. Just place your attention there. Now slowly bring your attention to your forehead and to your eye sockets. Just notice if there is any tension there. Many of us, we focus on our computers, cell phones, or when we are thinking too hard, we tend to get this area of the body very tense. Remember to breathe naturally, and as you exhale, relax your forehead, relax your eyes. Bring your attention now to your cheeks, to your nose. Go down to the mouth and to your jaw. Many of us also have a lot of tension in your jaws. Take a deep breath. Exhale and drop your jaw. Feel into your body. Bring your attention now to the back of your neck. Feel the muscles connecting the back of your neck to your shoulders. And feel in between your shoulder blades. Another deep breath in. And exhale. Relax your neck, shoulders. Let them drop. Bring your attention now to your chest. Just pay attention there. Go a little more down and feel into your stomach, your belly. Now feel into your lower back and feel the touch of the chair against your body. Another deep breath in, expand your belly, and exhale, relax. Feel into your hip bones. Feel your thighs and the touch of your hands on your thighs. Just pay attention there. Feel the back of your thighs in touch with the chair. Let the chair hold your weight. Don't tense up. Inhale again. And long exhale. Drop that weight on the chair. Feel your knees. Just bring your attention to your knees and the back of your knees. Feel into your shins and your calves. Feel your ankles, how they connect to your feet. And now feel the soles of your feet, the four corners, touching the ground. Take another deep breath, inhale, and exhale long. Now, just feel your whole body. Feel the whole outline of your body. Be present to your body from head to toe. And just be there quietly for a few seconds. There's nothing to do. Remember, if you feel distracted, bring your attention back to the physical sensation of your whole body. Slowly open up your eyes and gently Take in the environment around you, your surroundings. Just notice your environment. And now, just do whatever your body's telling you to do. If you want to yawn, yawn. If you want to stretch, stretch. Just go slowly. That's body scanning. Using your attention, being mindful of different areas of your body, using your body as a way to be present. I hope this small break in your day is helping you just to relax a little bit more, to be a little bit more present and grounded in the here and the now, so you can do your work more effectively, so you can find your center. Thank you very much for this time together. I hope you all have a great conference and keep doing the great work you are doing for the world. It was my privilege to be with you here for a couple minutes today. Enjoy the rest of your day, have a great life, and keep taking care of yourselves. And remember that saying, one cannot pour from an empty cup. So self-care comes first, so you can care for others with quality, with intention, with purpose. Take care.